Mr. Bradley, Mr. Bradley.
What's good, y'all? It's Mr. Bradley, and today we're going to be talking about mixing home recorded vocals. So if you're like me and you're working with a majority of independent artists, then there's a good chance that most of the vocals you're going to get from them are going to be recorded at home under budget settings with budget gear. So essentially what we're going to do today is break down the three main problem areas that I've come to notice just working with sessions like those over the years. And when I say budget, really what I mean here is just microphones that are, in the $100 to $200 range, same with interfaces, and anything outside of a treated vocal booth. It's not isolated. They might be using an isolation shield or, some pillows, some blankets, whatever. But essentially, those are the budget scenarios that I'm talking about. So the first problem area is extreme dynamic peaks. You're getting really loud peaks and also really quiet parts as well. The second is the room tone that's caught in the recording. Just the general room noise if there's AC going on, or just the frequencies that build up from the room that the artist is recording in. And the third most common problem I usually see is with these budget setups and the budget gear, there's oftentimes like a dull or lackluster top end that you get from some high quality studio microphones. But the main thing is, just because they're recorded at home, recorded in home studios, that doesn't mean we can't get them to sound professional and radio ready. That's definitely possible with an attention to detail, some experience, some ear training, and confidence. So let me show you guys how I like to tackle it. Okay, so now that we're in the mix session right here, let's just take a listen to the vocals real quick. And actually before we do that, so guys, the song I'm working with is called Jack Frost by the homies Parlay, SP Juice, produced by the homie +1. So make sure you check that out. I'll be sure to leave their socials and any links to the songs and their work in the description below. But back to the session. So let's take a listen to the vocals that we got drive. So real quick, let me just turn off all of the plugins.
Part-time rapper, full-time hustler, smart investments got me looking at my bank account proper. Steak under the lobster, shrimp over the pasta. Tell E-Way turn the beat up louder. Pops look me in my eyes and say he never been prouder.
Listen, hey, you can't pay what it costs. Balenciagas with the wrist, Jack Frost. I saw my soul, baby. Hey, I'm walking in the gutter boy spot like what's good. He'll figure for the slippers with the grace of.
Okay, cool. So we can hear these are actually recorded pretty well. They're comped pretty well. I don't notice any takes that have any extreme cutoffs. There's no clicks, no pops, and the general level is pretty good too. But you can definitely hear some room tone, some frequencies that built up in the place that they recorded this in. And there are some dynamic peaks too. So you can see, especially on the ad-libs, if we zoom in, there's some quiet parts, there's some peaks, and the general level just can be a little bit better, but that's what we as mix engineers have to fix. So that brings me back to the first point that we're going to cover, and that is just controlling the dynamics. Now the first thing we can do is just go in and edit and gain certain parts to be either quieter or louder. For example, I'm just gonna zoom in a little bit so we can really see the peaks. So if you want to go absolutely crazy, you can get into each individual peak like this and essentially just gain it down. Or gain these up that are quieter. And this is actually going to be just a great start. It'll just make sure that you don't have to work your compressors as hard. So this is the first step, right? Now I've already gained most of these when I was editing the project myself. So I'm personally comfortable at where we're at now with the level of the vocals. So when artists are recording at home, they're not going to be printing those vocals and running the mics through nice gear, nice hardware compressors. So that's why you get these peaks and the dynamics that you get. Now, since we've already sort of covered the editing phase, the trick that I've found really helpful is just using multiple compressors to tackle different workloads. And each time I'm using 3 different compressors and with a different goal in mind. So I'm not overworking one compressor at any single point in time. So the first compressor I like to throw on usually, let's just go to Parlay's verse right here. The first compressor I like to throw on is an R compressor. Now my goal with this first compressor here, essentially I'm just going very quick on the attack, very quick on the release, and nothing too crazy on the ratio, and really just pulling the threshold down until we're only getting the topmost peaks. Okay, so I'll let you see right here.
Part-time rapper, full-time hustler, smart investments got me looking at my bank account proper. Steak under the lobster, shrimp.
So we're never, you can see we're never going above 3 dB of gain reduction. So it's a very quick attack, very quick release, and really all we're trying to do here is just, like I said, control the most extreme peaks. Okay, we're not trying to get any real character, any real tone out of this compressor. This is sort of my way of just combating the vocals that aren't recorded with compression already printed onto them. Okay, cool. After that,
smart investments got me looking at my bank account proper.
I like to go into a compressor that's going to give your vocals most of its character and most of its tone. For this, I'm using a UAD2 tech. And this is where I'm doing most of the compression.
Smart investments got me looking at my bank account proper. Steak under the lobster,
I'm usually around 2, sometimes peaking up to like 5 or 7.
On my roster, 448 grams. That was my first.
But this is doing the bulk of its work. This compressor right here. An 1176 would probably be a good compressor too. You know, you just want basically to the second compressor that I use. I'm really, as I mentioned before, just using it for that character and that tone and the most noticeable compression.
Part-time rapper, full.
Then lastly, and by the way, guys, I know I'm skipping over some of these plugins I'm using on the vocal chain, but we're definitely going to cover those in the next couple of steps. So this is the last compressor I'll actually use on the vocal track. And obviously I'm going to use compression on vocal buses and later on in the mix. But the last compressor on my chain is an LA2A. And this is really just giving it a nice control. We're not going for anything too crazy here, as you can see.
Part-time rapper, full-time hustler, smart investments got me looking at my bank account proper. Steak under the lobster, shrimp over the pasta, can't let a bitch stress.
So that's how I like to tackle the first problem area, which is the dynamic peaks of home recorded vocals. Now to move on to the second step, which is controlling that room tone. So the way we fix room tone is really just with EQ. And you're going to find a lot of the room tone in most vocals to be anywhere from around the 200, maybe to 500 or 600 range. But really it's going to be just extra mud and boxiness. And so let's listen in to see what we can hear in SP's verse right now.
Hey, with the candy, listen, I'm walking.
And I'm gonna
in
mute the
spot,
background
like
vocals
Goody
just
Hill
for now.
Figure for the slippers with the gray Supreme hoodie, had to slide in the Beamer.
I'll turn on the compressors
black Ray-Ban lenses I copped.
that we
If
already
you ain't pull up the
established.
shop, gon' get pressed for your motive. I was in the Toyota.
So you can
European
really
for the motor.
hear,
KD
I'll throw
with
an
the crossover,
EQ
Curry
just to
for the
solo.
floater. My roster been impressive. It's a hoe from every country and a couple from the country. Let a nigga try to punch me. My youngest go doing foul. Showboating so hard, competition threw in the towel. Took a loss, ran my rack backs up in about 4.
I'm really hearing problems around this like high 600 area. So that just sounds really bad to me. And if we pull this down, let's see what happens.
Listen, I'm walking in the gutter boy spot.
Let me exaggerate
like
it.
Hill figure for the slippers with the gray Supreme hoodie,
And
had to
AB
slide
on
in
and
the
off.
Beamer. Benz in the shop, vision blurry black Ray-Ban lenses I copped. If you ain't pull
So
up
this
the
is a
shop,
little bit
gon' get
extreme,
pressed
some
for
of the
your
bodies coming out of it. But right around here is a definite problem area for me. Now let's go back into the actual EQ choices I made for the mix. So the first EQ I like to use in my chain, by the way, is just an REQ. And what I'm doing here, what my goal is with this one, it's not to get surgical at all. This is, you know, obviously it's limiting you to only 6 points, right? 6 bands. And 3 of them I generally like to use that are pretty static. Like this is just a low cut. Just everything below 90 hertz. I want to get the sub out, right? I want to get the frequencies in the vocals that are literally just taking up space. They're not adding anything to our mix at all. And then the 2 on the top end, really this is just for some presence and then clarity. So I like to use 3 cue points, really just be concise and get right after the problem areas I'm trying to tackle. Obviously, I'm going to get surgical later with the Pro Q3, but for me, this is just a good starting point just before I'm feeding the vocals into the compressors, just to get some of that room tone out of them.
Listen, I'm walking in the gutter boy spot. Like
let's see what I took out. On here, the same-ish area, 665. I took out 4 dB, and if we boost this, yeah, it's really just a harsh frequency. It's poking out a lot. So I took that about 4 dB in this case. And let's check the other 2 bands.
Let a nigga try to punch me, my youngest go doing foul. Showboating so hard, competition through in the towel. So
this is just like a little bit of like a resonant bass frequency. Probably nowadays if I mix, I would take a little bit less of this out, but still about 2 dB in this particular instance is okay. And then let's check this one.
Okay,
so that's another room tone I hear. That's just really abrasive and taking away from the vocal. I probably would take a little bit more of that down. Okay, so now let's A/B it just to see if the changes we made are actually helpful. Yeah, definitely in the lower end, the mid-range. That cleans it up a lot. So now just run this through a simple de-esser, just the waves de-esser.
Listen, I'm walking in the gutter boy spot. Like what's goody hill figure for the slippers.
And let's check out my Pro Q3. Let's A/B it on and off real quick.
Lenses I copped. If you ain't pull up the shop, gon' get pressed for your motive. I was in a Toyota, European for the motor. KD.
Okay, so again, just clearing up some more unwanted frequencies in the low mids. So yeah, the room tones that I find most often, like I said, are around anywhere from like 2 to 6, maybe up to 7 or 800. It really just depends on the vocals you get though, and the location that artist recorded. So that about covers it for the second topic. So just make sure to cover back again. To control the dynamics, make sure you're using different stages of compression and for different purposes. And for the second problem area, which was controlling that room tone, really you're just gonna have to train your ears and use EQ to just cut those frequencies out. So now on to the third problem area, and that is having dull top end or a lack of top end in most vocals that are recorded at home. So as I mentioned before, I'm de-essing, and not just once but actually twice, and with two different goals in mind. So the first, I'm using a high pass at 6K, and really we're just aggressively de-essing this. That way when we add the top end later, we're going to get rid of all that sibilance that comes with it, okay? And then the second de-esser I'm using is after all of the compression, not all of the compression, sorry, the first 2 compressors and the first 2 EQs I use. So now we're band passing here around 7.6. And the purpose of this one is just to control it even more right before we send it into the last plugin, the way I like to tackle that dull or lackluster top end, and that is high end saturation or harmonics. In this case, I'm using Gem Dopamine. I really like this plugin a lot. I've seen Disclosure use it. I've seen a lot of other people use it. So this is just what I've been on lately. Also, some plugins to consider for this if you don't have dopamine. The Waves Oral Exciter I found to be really helpful too. Basically, just playing with this knob, it gives you some harmonic saturation in the top end too. Another plugin is Fresh Air. I know that's common, I'm pretty sure it's free. But yeah, really the goal here is just to get very musical and a nice presence, nice clarity, and sort of just make that vocal shine. So that about pretty much wraps it up, guys. Let's just take a listen real quick and A/B the vocals with the effects on and off to hear the difference.
Part-time rapper, full-time hustle, smart investments got me looking at my bank account.
So this is everything off.
And
let's turn everything back on.
448 grams, that was my first P. Flip that shit twice, graduated to my first.
And let's take a listen to the hook real quick.
Listen, hey, you can't pay what it costs,
Everything off.
Hey, I came and dripping in sauce,
and back on.
Listen, hey, you can't pay what it costs, Balenciagas with the wrist Jack Frost, it's on my soul, baby.
So yeah, that's a pretty noticeable difference to me. Those are the 3 main problem areas that I find in sessions I get to mix from home recorded vocals. And if your experiences have been similar to mine in any way, the next time you're mixing home recorded vocals, keep these 3 things in mind and let me know if they help you out at all. That's about it for the video though, guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure you listen to Jack Frost on all streaming platforms by Parlay, Chip, SP Juice, and Plus One. And if you learned something new or found any information useful, make sure you drop a like, subscribe for more content like this, and see y'all soon. Peace.